if you're trying to chase all of these rabbits and do all of these things at any given time, you're never going to succeed.
25 minutes it takes to get back to that task that you're distracted from. The compound effect on that is just deadly.
Huge.
Like,
it's huge.
With everything going off, it's just like you're constantly just trying to get back to what you were doing.
If you do the stuff that makes you uncomfortable but moves the needle of your business or your health forward, you're going to be on a trajectory to win that day.
I mean, if you lie to yourself, you're not going to get where you honestly want to go.
100%.
Write that down. That's a Pat quote.
Banger. Distraction and lack of focus is the culprit of most agents. And so many times agents get to the end of the day and they just feel like their tires are spinning. So today's episode, which is episode 2 of the RECEO podcast, is going to be all about focus. And by the end of this conversation, we're going to make sure you have a tactical roadmap to eliminate distraction, overwhelm, and any issues you have feeling like you're not focused throughout the day. So welcome back to the RECEO podcast, episode 2, all about regaining focus and getting clarity so you operate out of progress every single day. Now, the only thing that we ever ask about this, because this is our initiative to get back to the industry, is that you share this with somebody. Share this with somebody that you know is struggling with focus. Share this with somebody that you know is maybe not where they want to be in their business, but we're not using this to make money. We're not running ads. We're not promoting products. All that we encourage is for you to share this with somebody that you know is in need. And again, like Pat and I talk about all the time, all that we want from you as well is to comment. Let us know what you're facing, what you're dealing with, any struggles you have, whether it be related to the topic we're talking about today or a completely different distraction that you have that's holding you back from achieving your true potential and success, because we do listen and read to 100% of the comments, and we want to make sure that we're catering these to help you get to the next level. So, Pat, what's going on, dude?
What's up? I'm excited. I'm going to need someone to share this episode with me once we're done, because I need help with focus, which I'm excited we're hitting.
Yeah. Well, again, we encourage you to do that. This is our gift back to the industry based on endless struggles of our own, and the fact that anything we talk about is something that we've dealt with ourselves, continue to deal with, but find ways to mitigate it. And this is going to be a topic now more important than ever, based on everything that's going on in the industry, in the world. All of these external factors are causing people to be more distracted and lose focus now more than ever. So before getting into focus and making sure that, again, by the end of this, you know exactly what to do, I just want to say a couple things that are critical to understanding when it comes to the concept of focus. The first is understanding and just accepting that everybody deals with it. Distraction, overwhelm, losing focus is something we all deal with every single day. But it's how you can adjust and adapt to that that is a critical component. I think another thing is that time management often gets brought into the concept of focus. The truth is that it's not time management, it's priority management. And we'll get to that about how to manage your priorities, but everybody has the same 24 hours. Where a lot of agents go wrong is it's not that they don't have time for something. It's that they're not making time for it because they haven't made it a priority. And then lastly, just realizing when it comes to focus that the man who chases 2 rabbits catches none. That is one of the best quotes that was ever shared to me by one of my mentors, which is, if you're trying to chase all of these rabbits and do all of these things at any given time, you're never going to succeed. You need linear focus, you need clarity on where you're going, and you need to have a plan so that you actually know what you're supposed to be doing. So let's dive in to all things focus.
Every time you bring up that quote, something clicks in me where it's just like that quote resonates with me a lot. So I want to start off with, so in real estate, there's distractions everywhere.
Yeah.
You got clients texting you, people calling you, notifications going off. What do you think are the top distractions that realtors are facing with today?
Well, first we have to start with when we're actually recording this, right? At the time that we're recording this and at the time we're going to be releasing it, now more than ever, people are facing distraction of the economy, distraction of the market, interest rates, NAR settlement, all of these external forces that you don't have control over. But then also you slam in the election on top of that, and you start compounding all of these things and adding and adding and adding. And that's the first part, which is people are losing focus and getting distracted based on the narrative of all the external forces that are happening that are out of your control. And we'll get to that because, again, it's important to only deal with what you actually can control. And then we've got the obvious, right? Which is social media, comparison, client interactions, administrative tasks, fear of failure, perfectionism, procrastination. You've got all of these things that stem from distraction associated with executing. And if people are able to eliminate those distractions and just wake up and know exactly what they need to do every single day, their business would be in a drastically different place than it is right now. And, even let me bring up, because I have these stats here.
Right? Stat attack,
right? Pat attack, stat attack. Let's look at this, right? 2 critical stats and pieces of data that I think really reinforce what you and I are going to unpack today when it comes to tactical strategies to help people with focus. So the first one, according to a study by the University of California, Irvine, workers spend an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds on a task before getting distracted. So they're spending 23 minutes on a task before they get distracted. After being distracted, it takes an average of 25 minutes to return to the original task. That means that distractions can lead to a cumulative loss of productivity. So when I hear that, and I see it in my own business, is that anytime you have these external factors of notifications, the dopamine of a notification on social media, or a text coming through, or a missed voicemail, or anything of that nature, you're getting into the rhythm, you're getting into the momentum, and then suddenly something breaks that, and it takes you just as much time to get back into the swing of things as it does to even execute. And then you spend another 23 minutes, and then you're off track again. So when you start looking at that, that goes back to that concept of being busy versus productive. I talked in the introduction about people getting to the end of the day, putting in a 10, 12, 14-hour day, and they feel like they spun their tires. Well, the reason why they feel like they spun their tires is because they spent all day, mitigating distractions to the point where half the day was lost just trying to get back on track. And then we have another stat, which is really critical, which is about multitasking. A study published in Psychological Science found that multitasking can reduce productivity by up to 40%. I've heard this time and time again. For realtors juggling various responsibilities, multitasking can lead to missed opportunities and errors in client interactions. So this is where people are, again, trying to handle so many different things at once, and they feel like they can handle it without realizing the detriment of what it's actually doing to their business, which is a 40% reduction in progress just by trying to tackle multiple things at once instead of having crystal clear direction of getting a task to completion, then moving on to the next. I think you and I can even speak to that. There's so many times where we'll have so many projects on the go, and we'll get 25% progress on this one, and then we'll go get 33% progress on this one, and then we'll go get 17% progress on this one. And you get to the end of a month, and you're like, why are all these projects not completed? And it's because you were trying to multitask. You were trying to do everything at once instead of just saying, hey, I need to follow up with this list of clients. I need to get this prospecting done. I need to get these videos out. I'm going to do that task until it's done and then move on. So I love that stat about multitasking because all too many people think that that's like a superpower that nobody actually has.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm just kind of blown away with that 25 minutes it takes to get back to that task that you're distracted from. The compound effect on that is just deadly.
Huge. It's huge.
With everything going off, it's just like you're constantly just trying to get back to what you were doing.
Yeah. And that's why people feel stuck. They feel like they hit a plateau, they're stagnant, and they're not building any momentum. And when you start looking at this is what happens a lot of times with new agents is they treat everything like it's urgent. And we'll address that later, but by treating everything like it's urgent, you have no choice but to multitask because there's always going to be these external factors coming into the picture, which is inevitable. So if you have no way to decipher and delineate between what's important and what's not, you are always going to be spending half of your days trying to just get back on track, not even building momentum, trying to stay where you are already. It's crazy.
Can't blame someone for feeling that way, that they're trapped, which is, I mean, this goes perfectly into my first question is, do you have any quick hacks on regaining focus when your mind's either wandering somewhere, you're getting sidetracked by who knows what? Like what's the tactical thing that I can do? Because I mean, I struggle with this. I think everything's urgent. I'm a squirrel basically.
Yeah.
So what's some tactical advice there that I can implement today that'll help me with that?
The first thing that people need to do when getting distracted and overwhelmed and not knowing what to decipher in terms of what's important is to actually identify what is important. That's the first thing. You have to realize 20% of the things that you do yield 80% of the income that you have. So why are you spending time prioritizing or treating that 80% like it's urgent when the 20% is what brings all your business? And that's what you and I had a conversation with last week about, is looking at the fact that, okay, anything that impacts income right now is priority number one. Mm-hmm. That's urgent. That's stuff that has to be addressed today. Anything, and so for anybody that's, in real estate, that could be anything that impacts a deal that could go under contract, is under contract, or has potential. That's urgent because it impacts income today. If there's something that could be done at a later date without immediate ramifications, that's something that could be done in the next week, right? And what that could be like is responding to emails. I think where a lot of people go wrong is they don't set boundaries. They have a lack of clarity of what's actually important to them. That's the first thing to identify. And then the second thing is being able to map out those priorities and how you're going to address them. That's like, looking at the emails, waiting, priority, looking at things of what needs to be done today, what can be done later. And for anybody that's in real estate, it's really just looking at how does this impact your business right now? If you have a message from a client and they want to come view a property next week, okay, you can address that later today, after you've done all your urgent work, after you've done prospecting, after you've done your content, after you've done anything that creates income now. So income now, in my opinion, is priority number one. Priority number two is going to be client management for non-urgent situations. These are clients you're working with. These are clients that are not under contract. They are coming into town. They're browsing around. And then you've got all the other stuff that is just, do it later, right? But I think the first thing people need to identify is what's actually a priority for them. And
so going with that, where anything income producing is a priority, it's kind of rolling into this. You've mentioned a million times that you've got a power list or a priority list that at the start of the day, you write down everything you need to be done today.
Yeah.
Now, are all of those always income impacting tasks that you need to do that day? Or how do you decipher what makes it on that list daily?
Well, that opens up a whole other conversation, right? Which is people need clarity on their goals, because where people lose focus is they set annual goals, right? And so maybe it's 24 deals in a year. And they set that in January, and it's like, okay, by December 31st, I want to do 24 deals, 2 deals a month. That's great. Well, by the nature of doing that, that's what I refer to as a long-term goal. it's very difficult to measure if you're on track or not in January, in February, in March. There's so many variables that happen. And what's important for people to do is to identify that long-term goal, then reverse engineer that into a quarterly goal, right? Which is like the concept, the book, The 12-Week Year. For anybody that hasn't read it, highly encourage you to read it. But it's an incredible book because in 12 weeks or one quarter, it's long enough to be able to get actual progress of any big project complete, but it's also short enough to measure. That's a very critical concept that people need to apply to their business. And where we're going with this is to identify the priorities that you need to do on a daily basis. We need to know where we're going, right? That's where so many people fall short is, if you want to use a great analogy, it's like using a GPS, right? If I want to go from here to Vancouver, if I just put Vancouver in the GPS, but I don't put a start point, I could be in Calgary where we actually are. I could be in Toronto. I could be in Denver. I could be in California. I could be all over the map. You'll never get there. So how do you know what the first turn is or the first item that you need to do that's a priority if you don't know where you're starting? So identifying where you are today is critical. Encouragement number one for anybody listening, write out where you're at today. And to give you some guidance on how to approach that, write out the things that you struggle with and the things that you're good at. Do you struggle with discipline? Do you struggle with accountability? Do you struggle with time management? Do you struggle with consistency? What are all of the things that you struggle with? Because if we don't identify them, we can't actually improve on them. After you've identified where you are today, that's when you set the 12-month goal. Reverse engineer that into a quarter. Now that we've got a quarter, okay, now we have a game plan of what we're going to do in the next 3 months. After we get the quarterly goal, now it's time to focus on the process. This is critical when it comes to focus. Not focusing on the outcome, but focusing on the process, right? If you just focus on those 24 deals a year, how do you know what activities you need to do on any given day to get there? If you look at anybody that's a real winner in real estate or people that are doing $500,000, $1 million GCI, all that they're doing is focusing on winning today. Because at the end of the day, today's the only thing you have control over. Not tomorrow, not next month, not what might happen in the market in springtime when usually it goes ballistic. What if it doesn't? What if interest rates skyrocket? Focusing on what you have today. So once we have that quarterly goal or the 12-week goal, that's when we reverse engineer it into a weekly routine and daily schedule. Okay, the reason why I don't just say a daily routine is because you need to look at the week as a whole. And I'm coming at this from a place of not having kids and not being married. But with all of my business partners being married with kids, I understand that sometimes the weekend is different than the weekday, especially if you have a spouse that works a 9 to 5. So we need to look at the week as a whole. Once we have clarity on the week as a whole, we then map out what are the critical tasks that will get me the result. So when we look at this, agents only have 3 things that they need to concern themselves with: getting clients, servicing clients, and nurturing clients. Well, the majority of agents don't have clients right now. So you don't need to worry about servicing them. You don't need to worry about nurturing them. The only thing you need to understand or focus on is wake up every single day and focus on getting clients. Okay, so we're sitting here January 1st and we're looking at the next quarter. How do I build out that daily routine, which we will get to the power list? The daily routine is going to focus on the income-producing, needle-moving activities that will help get you to the outcome. So you have to pick your poison. What are you choosing to get clients? My recommendation is always an active form of prospecting and a passive form of prospecting. Active is going to be cold calling, door knocking, networking, anything where you can control the amount of conversations you have per day and getting face-to-face with other people. Passive prospecting is going to be, my favorite being YouTube. You've got Instagram, you've got TikTok. that's prospecting that is just going in the background for you. Both are important. Both are necessary, especially if you have no clients. So if I look at that weekly routine, what we need to fit in there is, what am I doing? Let's say door knocking in YouTube. Okay, I'm going to door knock 2-3 hours a day, Monday to Friday, weekends for the family. Okay, well, I also need to do my content. Now we need to map out when we're preparing our content and when we're recording content. Well, where a lot of people get tripped up is they'll say, what happens when shit comes out of nowhere? What happens, I'm supposed to record content, but a client hit me up and they're like, hey, I want to view this house. Like, now. You need to be agile and understand the inevitable is going to happen. We'll address that later. But once we get those critical activities, which is getting clients, servicing clients, nurturing clients, active passive prospecting to get them, servicing, anybody with a license should know how to do, and nurturing follow-up, right? Okay, well, now that takes us to our power list, our daily activities. So when I look at a power list, this is a concept derived by Andy Frisella, where the essence of it is if you could do 5 income-producing, needle-moving activities every single day for 100 days straight, your business will be on a trajectory to achieving that outcome you're looking for, right? This is not do it for 7 days and then stop. This is a challenge, just like 75 Hard, of 100 days of following through with those commitments you make to yourself. So to answer your question, what goes on the power list? The power list is anything that impacts your goals directly, right? So this is not laundry, doing the dishes. For some people, it could be going to the gym if you're on 75 Hard. That could be a critical task that maybe your health, which it should be for all of us, is part of your quarterly goals. But that's about it when it comes to the personal side, right? Anything that is leading toward fulfillment or health. Then that leaves the real needle-moving activities. So when you look at the power list that I have, it's going to be planning X number of videos. It's going to be recording X number of videos, following up with X number of clients, also prospecting for a certain amount of time. The power list is not supposed to be easy, which is why in order to get the best results, I always encourage people to do it in the first half of the day when you have the most energy. Again, everybody operates differently, but that's usually what works the best, because it's like that, the concept of, eating the frog, right? Swallowing the frog, doing the thing that you don't want to do first, cold plunging for some people, right? If you do the stuff that makes you uncomfortable, but moves the needle of your business or your health forward, you're going to be on a trajectory to win that day. So if you start to write down, understanding where you're trying to go, identifying where you're at today, and you just write down the 5 things that you need to do today, if you start stacking that, you don't need to do more than 5 things, right? Because it could be prospecting for a couple hours, follow up for 30 minutes, and then record a certain amount of time to be consistent. That's all you actually need to be focused and to build momentum with your business. Everybody overcomplicates this shit to the point where they're like, well, maybe I could do 7 things. If you're doing 7 to 8 things, you haven't made the first 5 important enough and difficult enough that actually moves the needle of your business.
I think we can just end the podcast right there.
Yeah.
Just,
right.
I'm totally
well,
kidding.
Before moving on, let's address one very critical thing that people need to understand.
Okay.
Where the majority of agents fail when it comes to goal setting, business planning, and focus is they plan for the ideal. So everybody, January is coming up in a couple of months, and everybody's going to set up new year, new me, all this nonsense, and they're going to set their goal. And it's like the Mike Tyson quote, right? Everybody has a plan to get punched in the face. Well, guess what's going to happen probably like a week or 2 into January?
Punch in the face.
Punch in the face, right? Something's going to come out of nowhere. This year, nobody expected the NAR settlement. Nobody expected where the election's going to go. Nobody expected all of this distraction, but it's guaranteed to happen. So if we know that the unideal is guaranteed to happen, why don't people plan for it, right? So that goes to a concept that, one of my coaches and dear friends, George Bryant, talks about, which is the wedge of expectations. So let's break down 3 critical things. Let's say you want to prospect for your active lead generation. You want to do YouTube for your passive lead generation. And then you want to get in better shape. So you want to go to the gym every day. 3 needle moving activities for your overall wellness of your business and your personal life. So many people are going to set out in the new year and they're going to say, okay, I'm going to prospect 2 hours a day. I'm going to put out 2 YouTube videos a week, and I'm going to work out hard at the gym for an hour a day. What happens when you get sick? What happens when you travel? What happens when something unexpected happens, which is guaranteed to happen? What happens to most people is they go from momentum to doing nothing, right? So something gets out of the loop today. Maybe a client comes into town and they need to, work with you directly right now. They just don't prospect at all, or they don't put any videos at all, or they don't work out at all. It's all or nothing. And this all or nothing mentality, what it does is it breaks momentum, right? It's like we talked about with regaining focus, about taking so much time to get back on track. Well, if you're driving a car down the highway at 100 miles an hour, and then you pump the brakes and go down to 20, the amount of energy it takes to build back that momentum to get up to 100 is astronomical. But if you're going 100 and you just tap the brakes and you go down to 80, the amount of effort it takes to get back to 100 is minuscule. So the goal with focus is to stay in momentum. It's not to always have perfect momentum, but to stay in momentum and not break it entirely. So to go back to the 3 things that we're talking about, let's say something unexpected happens, something with a kid, you get sick, whatever. If you can't prospect today, don't do nothing, but maybe instead of prospecting, follow up with 5 people on your database. You've got your ceiling, which is your ideal. Prospect 2 hours a day. You need to design a floor. And your floor is when the unideal happens. I'm going to follow up with 10 people today. Cool. Okay, something unexpected happens. Can't do my 2 YouTube videos a week. Okay. Well, number 1, you should be batching, so you should be ahead of the curve anyway, but that's a side tangent.
Yeah, whatever. We'll get there.
We'll get there. But that's okay. Instead of recording your 2 videos that day, plan your next 4. Do something. If you can't go to the gym today because something happened, walk outside for 15 minutes and do something. So that wedge of expectations goes from doing what most people do, which is just designing the perfect day every day. And then they get their teeth kicked in by something unexpected, which you knew was going to happen. And then they go back down to doing nothing. And that's what causes agents to have this ebb and flow cycle roller coaster of a business, because they're constantly breaking momentum. Then they feel like they have to put all this energy in to ramp it back up. Then they break momentum, ramp it back up, and it crushes your focus. Instead of just maintaining momentum, but always making sure you're making progress in some way, shape, or form.
I love that. That's powerful. I'm still soaking it in here. So yeah, do you think most people don't have a floor?
I think most people haven't thought about it. I think there's so many people, a lot of real estate agents, for the better, are ambitious, but they're ambitious to a fault. And that's where most people, you and I talk about this, is people underestimate what they can do in 5 years, but they overestimate what they can do in a year. And people will come in, and it's so funny. It's like me, and for anybody that's listening, I suck at running, right? But I suck at running because I don't try to run. But that's like me being aware of that and saying, tomorrow I'm going to go run a marathon when I haven't run a mile. Well, if I want to run a marathon, you have to build up certain skill sets to get there. And people will come into the new year with all this distraction and lack of focus, and they won't solve all of their critical issues, but they'll set these enormous goals. So they're setting themselves up for failure, because what you need to understand is that your income is a direct reflection of the type of entrepreneur or realtor you become. If you made 80K this year and you want to make 200K next year, all that you have to do is think, what would somebody who makes $200,000 a year do? How would they operate? Well, guess what? They'd probably be consistent. They'd probably follow up with clients and leads. They probably would manage their time and their priorities properly and have a calendar that they stick to. And they would probably do all of these different things. All that you need to do to get there is to start doing those things. But where agents go wrong is they don't have that internal dialogue to come into the new year and actually audit where they've gone wrong, right? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing twice, expecting a different result. That's why you see all these agents repeating their first year for like 15, 20 years, because they don't have that internal dialogue of being like, hey, I'm really dropping the ball. Every time I put something in my calendar, I negotiate with myself. Anytime I set a goal, I fall short, because you don't achieve your goals, you achieve your standards. And if you don't understand where you're falling short on your standards, you're never going to be able to achieve goals bigger than you're at, because your income is a reflection of your standards. So I encourage people to be honest with themselves and realize that you have to have that internal reflection before you can start building momentum, because you don't even know where you're starting.
I think this is going to be a thing we say a lot, is be honest with yourself. Because, I mean, if you lie to yourself, you're not going to get where you honestly want to go.
100%.
Write that down. That's a Pat quote. Right
Banger.
Okay, I really love that. And now I kind of want to dive into maybe planning your day.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. So let's just say I feel that everything is urgent that's coming my way. Yeah. I don't know how to decipher. I don't have a priority list yet. I'm working on it. And every day for me seems different. And you mentioned agile and all that. So how would I start time blocking with that?
Yeah. Well, the time blocking situation, again, is a massive misunderstanding for most people. And I want to explain where most people go wrong with time blocking. And that's why I wanted to bring up Parkinson's law, right? Parkinson's law is, if you give yourself an allotted time to finish something, you're going to take that amount of time to finish something. So let's go back to my university days, right? When you have 3 hours to do this exam. If you look at the amount of people that are writing that exam, and when they finish, they usually finish all within 2.5 hours, 2 hours 45, right up to the narrow window of 3 hours. If they were given 2 hours to do that exam, you'd have to do it in 2 hours. But you're designed to fill the allotted time to do something. And this is where focus gets lost, because people will be so gracious with themselves that they'll give themselves 2 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours to do a task that really only needed 1 hour. And what happens if something actually only needed 1 hour to do, but they gave themselves 3 hours? They get distracted because they're giving themselves grace to take and fill this time. I've got time, right? 15 minutes into it, you get a notification. I got 2.5 hours left. Let me check it.
I'm killing it.
Right? I'm good. I got time.
Yeah.
Right? And they start to negotiate with themselves because they gave so much time. So when you're time blocking, you need to be very critical of yourself and your capacity. That's not to say that you're a machine. This is a muscle that takes time to develop. So the time it took for me to record content and plan content 7 years ago when I started is way different than the time it takes now because of the skill set. But you have to give yourself some grace to know that maybe you're just starting something new, like leveraging your CRM, putting out content. But you also have to be real with yourself and say, this is how much time it should take, and time yourself doing an activity. You'll start to find all these inefficiencies in your business if you time how long it takes to do something. When you're under the clock, there's that added pressure. Dude, when I have a window of time blocked off to get something done, and I know that it's actually going to take that amount of time, it's like those scenarios where you're in like the fucking Twilight world, where it's just like you're so focused that nothing else matters. Everybody's experienced that at some point. You're like in this external zone. You're in the Matrix, dude.
Locked in.
Yeah, locked in. But that's because you're focusing on an important task, meaning you know the benefit of accomplishing that task, and you know that it's actually going to take that long if you're hyper-focused. So when we start looking at time blocking, number one, make sure your phone's on Do Not Disturb. And that's going to be critical. And some people are going to be critical of that and be like, well, I've got all these clients that are working with, and what if a property's under contract, or what if something happens, right? All the what ifs. Well, let me explain two different things that you need to do in that situation. Number one, if your phone's on Do Not Disturb and you've got clients that are actually under contract or urgent, you can make those people show up when they're on Do Not Disturb, right? In the settings. The only people that show up are you and my parents, right? Always. Because I've got clarity on what's important to me right now. But then you also have to set boundaries. This is where agents go wrong when it comes to getting distracted, is they tell their clients, I'm available whenever. I'm here to serve, which is good, right? Serve, don't sell. But I'm here for you at any given time. Well, no shit, people are calling you at 11 at night or 7 in the morning or on weekends or on holidays because you set the standard and told your clients you're available whenever. That's your problem. That's not your client's problem. If you set clear boundaries in the beginning and say, listen, I've got a family. After 7 p.m., I'm with the kids, or after 5 p.m., unless it's urgent, deal right now, I'll respond the next day. I don't know a single person that's going to be like, screw your family, you got to respond to me.
I gotta go buy this house right now,
man. Yeah, and if it is, then that's just not the type of client you want to be working with. So setting boundaries, being aware of the urgent priorities are two massive things that are important, right? So we need to start to address what's urgent when it comes into your business, right? To get back to your question, as we talked about, if it's something that impacts you getting paid, that to me is urgent. That is not a meeting with a lender. That is not a social media notification. That is not, responding to 99% of your emails. That is you prospecting, client interaction, stuff that is in the moment today that impacts you getting paid and your client getting the outcome that they deserve.
I love that. It's funny that you said put boundaries on. I'm watching The Office right now, and Dwight is trying to sell this guy on buying his paper, and he's just like, here's my pager number, my fax number, my phone line. I never take any holidays. I'm never sick. That's he's got no boundaries on it. It's hilarious. And I guess I feel that maybe you are bad with those boundaries too, on the external aspects where you're so locked into your work, which impresses me. I mean, you've accomplished so many successful things, right? But it's got to be exhausting.
Dude, I'm really glad that you brought this up. You have to be aware where you're at in your life, because people that have kids and are married are going to say, well, I can't work like you do. Great. I don't want you to work like you do. And I can tell anybody that's listening, I ain't going to be doing this when I have kids and when I have a family. That doesn't excuse you not getting the job done, though, right? Because there's a woman in my city. She does 250 deals a year while solo homeschooling 5 kids.
Oh, my God.
Ridiculous, right? Yes. So talk about priority management. Like,
yeah, 100%.
So it drives me nuts when people are like, of course you could do this because you don't have kids. Like, yeah, I could put in extra time and, build momentum a little bit quicker than most people. But that's still not an excuse not to get the job done. But I'm very aware of where I'm at in my life, right? I wanted to make sure that by the time I have kids and I get married, that time freedom and financial freedom is not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So while I'm not married and while I'm not, I don't have kids, I'm going to put in the extra time and I'm going to make the extra sacrifices now, knowing that I want to be there for my kids in the future, watching them grow up and being able to be there by their side every step of the way and never miss a game or never miss a practice or anything that's important to them. But for me, I'm front loading that work so that I don't have to deal with that when I know that's coming down the road. Mm-hmm. So I'm just hyper aware of what phase I'm at in my life, and I'm okay with that. However, I also let it go for too long. And that's something that's very honest and very transparent is I never, this is an important concept. PDCA, right? Which is plan, do, check, adjust. Very critical for people when using their power list or winning any single day or looking at their business and their life as a whole. Because as driven, motivated entrepreneurs or real estate agents, you're always on this sliding scale. Because once you achieve 6 figures, 100K, guess what? You want 250. Once you get 250, guess what? You want $500,000. Once you get $500,000, you want $1 million. Once you get $1 million, you want 10, right? I've been there. I'm still there. But I didn't do the plan, do, check, audit, and adjust. And I got stuck in the sliding scale where it was always the next thing, because to me, what I convinced myself as very kind of ignorantly, because I've been on a massive journey to personal development and personal growth, you don't know what you don't know. So I was told myself, again, going back to that concept in the last episode that we talked about, the power perspective, I was that person said, if this happens, then I'll change. So to me, I convinced myself for so many years, once I have kids, I'll stop working like this. Once that happens, I'll stop doing that. But it's taking longer to have that happen in my life than I initially planned, right? Due to all of my own mistakes. And we'll talk about that on a different episode. But what I needed to realize is that overall mental health, fulfillment, happiness, that's the real goal. And I lost sight of that for so long. And I got stuck in that sliding scale of just saying, once this happens, I'll stop doing this, without realizing that I want all of that because I know it'll make me fulfilled. I know it'll make me happy. And I know it'll give me purpose. But mountain biking makes me happy and makes me fulfilled, right? Getting back to the gym, spending time with you, spending time with my family. All of those things are things I can do right now that give me that same feeling. Right? Yes, there's different extremities to that, but I needed people who care about me, people who love me, people like you, people like my parents, to be able to come and say, "Hey, dude, go
get the mountain bike.
Yeah, go get the bike. Like,
do it.
Start doing stuff for yourself." And as I've started to do that, I've actually started to see my progress go up, because now, with my parents being 2 minutes down the street, anytime they want to meet and go for a coffee or hang out for dinner, unless there's something wildly urgent in my business, I'm doing it. I'm saying yes every time. But before, I convinced myself that I couldn't, right? And it's not that somebody doesn't have time. It's, again, goes back to priority management. It's that you're not making time. Because if something's important enough, you will always make time for it, right? Before we go to the next question, I'll give the very harsh example that I give to people all the time. And this happens when people are like, I don't have time for YouTube, right? Or anything else in their business. Maybe you're a mother, right? And you've got a son, and you're at the park, and somebody comes and snatches your son, steals your son, and runs away to his car and drives off, right? Do you need to tell somebody? Do you need somebody to tell you, hey, you should probably cancel that meeting today and go get your son, or are you going to wait for the perfect time, right? That's such a major priority. It's such an urgent, immediate repercussion that you're going to do whatever it takes because it's a priority to you right now. That's where agents go wrong, is what they do is if they can't feel the ramifications or the repercussions of not doing something now, they don't do it. So we take YouTube, for example, and making that a priority focus, staying on topic with this conversation, is they won't record the videos this week. Okay, guess what? Nothing happens. And they don't do it next week, and nothing happens. And then 6 months from now, when they've got a dry pipeline and not enough money in the bank to pay for their living expenses, it's like, oh shit, probably should have been doing that. Well, that's because the repercussions are delayed. And that's where agents really struggle when coming from school or 9 to 5. If you don't do what you need to in school or 9 to 5, 9 to 5, your boss is breathing down your neck and you could get fired. School, you get a big fat F, you have to do it again. Entrepreneurship, real estate, if you don't do what you know you need to do, ain't nobody saying anything about it. There's no repercussions. So what I started to do to regain focus around that is I made the repercussions immediate, right? When I was door knocking, where I door knocked 3 hours a day, every day for my first 6 months, if I didn't door knock, I made a promise and a commitment to myself that I'm going to donate $100 to a local charity or a food bank. I was piss broke back then, so $100 was actually a big deal to me. So number one, I didn't want to lose $100, but number two, if I did, it went to a good cause. So any time that I'm struggling to stay focused, I look at the urgent, critical activities that I need to do to move my business forward: active prospecting, passive prospecting, follow-up. And I find a way to make the repercussions of not doing those activities an immediate pain. And the moment I started to do that, where I would find some way to give back or some way to make me feel it, dude, I started doing it all the time.
It's powerful. It doesn't have to be financial, but you could do, okay, I don't record those YouTubes. I got to bang out 50 push-ups.
Yeah.
I got to do something that sucks and I don't want to do it.
100%.
And I just want to wrap it up with one thing. This has been a really powerful talk on focus and everything like that. For the people that do plan something, they do get kicked in the teeth. They're constantly being distracted. They can't focus. And they're trying to do the right thing, but they're losing motivation. I think we need to finish this off with how to stay motivated in these times of like hard focus and all the shit going on.
Yeah.
How do you keep going?
Yeah, dude. Amazing question. And there's two ways I want to address this, because there's times where you veer off track, right? There's times where it's like, okay, I'm getting distracted, I'm losing focus, and this is kind of like it happened for like 1 or 2 days, right? You're veering off track. There's other situations where you're in a fucking different country, right? You're so far off track.
Google Maps.
Yeah, like Google ain't saving you here, right? So there's, okay, I need to course correct. And then I'm in the middle of the ocean, right? So let's kind of address those. When people are just looking at course correcting, that's where you really need to get back to the drawing board of reminding yourself why you got started, right? These are the little moments where you feel like giving up. These are the little moments where you're hyper distracted, and these are the little moments where you're riddled with self-doubt, wondering if this is even for you, right? It's a couple of days. You're starting to veer off track. The quickest way I've found to do that is to remember why you got started and to remind yourself of your why, right? So whenever anybody gets into real estate, I don't hear a single person that passes their exam and then they're like, well, I guess that's pretty cool. I'm going to try this for 3 months. And if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to my fucking 9 to 5, right? Nobody says that. They're ecstatic. They're over the moon. And they got started because they wanted to change their life. They wanted to change their family's life. They wanted to be the one that becomes the first millionaire in their family lineage, or whatever that looks like to them, whatever success looks like to them. And usually their why is associated with that in some way, shape, or form, right? So you look at me, right? I wanted to, become the first millionaire in my family, which I did. And I wanted to, I'm on this never-ending journey to be proving what I'm capable of to myself. But my why right now is my parents and my current family, and my why when I have my own family one day will blend the two of those together. I keep my family and my future family at the forefront of my mind 24/7 at all times. So anytime I veer off track or I don't want to prospect, I don't want to record these videos, I remind myself why I got started, and I remind myself, who am I doing this for? And it has to be bigger than you, because the truth is, if we're all honest with ourselves, we have all gotten this habit of disappointing ourselves. We don't follow through with commitments. Nothing happens. So we get familiar with there being no repercussions. But when you realize those repercussions impact your family, that's a whole different ballgame when it impacts somebody else. So veering off track, why you got started and who you're doing this for, bigger than you. If we're out in the middle of the ocean, that's where we do what you and I just did. Whenever you find yourself way off track and you're contemplating whether or not you can continue in this industry, that's where you need to take a step back. You need to take 2 steps back to take 10 steps forward. And what I encourage anybody to do, especially this time of year, especially if you're in a seasonal market where it tends to be a little bit slower, take 2 or 3 days off and get out of your current environment. That could be a staycation at a hotel or a different place in the city. That could be like you and I going to Banff for a couple days, right? Hang out in the mountains a little bit. That could be as drastic as go to Mexico for a few days. I don't care. Change your setting. Because for me, what I've realized is that if I'm down here in this dungeon, like I do all day long, I'm inclined to get back to the routine that I'm familiar with. And most people operate that way because we're creatures of habit. You need to break that habit drastically. So go put yourself in a completely different environment and do a deep dive audit. Regain focus. All that you need to do if you're really out in the middle of the ocean, take 2-3 days off, change your environment, start from scratch. 12-month goals, quarterly goals, weekly routine, daily schedule. Everything we talked about in the beginning. But you have to re-audit everything and have those honest conversations with yourself of where you're messing up. Because the truth is, as soon as people start pointing the finger and playing the blame game, blaming the broker, the brokerage, their team leader, the market, who's in politics, or any of that shit, as soon as you point the finger, you're removing your ability to change the outcome because you're blaming somebody else. The second you start taking ownership of everything, whether it's your fault or not, find a way to make it your fault. Because once you make it your fault, you can make a controlled decision to change the outcome. So if you're in the middle of the ocean, go through that entire sequence again, but be real with yourself. Be honest with yourself and say, yeah, dude, I really jacked up my calendar. I built out this perfect calendar, didn't stick to any of it. I was super inconsistent. And also the concept of it's not just what you do, it's how you do it. Like you can be consistent with prospecting or YouTube and suck at it. How are you showing up? And once you get to the point where you're honestly showing up with integrity, honestly showing up with intent to serve and not to sell, and you have clarity on the path that you're going, and you remind yourself on these little veering moments why you got started and who you're doing this for, dude, you're never going to run into any issues. You're going to achieve everything you've ever wanted.
I love that. And I just want to let everyone know, like, if you are stuck in that middle of that ocean, you are not alone. And you are your own way out of it. You are your life jacket in a way. And I kind of want to maybe challenge the listeners to 2 things to maybe give us in the comments. Their first power list of 5 things that would move items in their business, and what's something that's bigger than them that motivates them.
Yeah.
So I think those are the two kickstarting things to really get you on this right path and get you fired up.
100%. Well, that's perfect. Drop in what your power list looks like, and also drop in your why, right? Why are you doing this? And we're going to read all of them. I'm excited to read them because it's going to give us more insight as to, we do this for the community, right? So when we get to understand and learn you better as, listeners and get to, bring some of your story into these episodes, that's what's fun and fulfilling about this. So yeah, comment below, let us know. We greatly appreciate when you interact with the content, and we want to hear your story. The more we can learn about you along this journey, the more we're going to be able to serve you. And, finding out what motivates our community is the most inspiring thing. And that's honestly what keeps us going half the time, right? So on that same vein, we talked about the fact that you don't achieve your goals, you achieve your standards. And also, your income is a direct reflection of who you've become as an entrepreneur and as a real estate agent. So that tees up perfectly our next episode. You're going to want to stay tuned for episode 3, where we're going to be taking you on a complete structured path of how to become the best version of yourself. I've taken the last entire 12 months, invested over $200,000 this year alone on my own personal journey, let alone over $600,000 in the last few years, to become a better version of myself. And what I want to do, and what I'm going to do in the next episode, is to give you all of my lessons so that you don't have to spend that, and we could put you on the path to elevating your standards and becoming a better version of yourself. So again, please share this with somebody that you know needs to hear this. We appreciate you following along for our journey here at the RECEO podcast, and you're going to want to make sure that you show up for the next one. We'll see you there.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.